Today on Notsam Wrestling, more about The Rock blurring the lines. What happens to Dominik Mysterio after WrestleMania? Cody Rhodes is finally getting mad. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling, and what a time it's already been. A very, very busy weekend. Of course, we had to let the siren blare and get right on here late Friday night to talk about everything that had happened on Friday, not just on SmackDown, but also with The Rock's Instagram promo, 20 minutes of just beautiful explanation. I absolutely loved it. And then on Sunday, I mean, something that was great I found about this weekend, and sometimes you just got to wait till it hits you, is I felt like as wrestling fans, between Friday and Sunday, it all hit us at different times that Sting was retiring. You know, I felt like during the week, everybody just kind of, oh yeah, pay-per-view's coming up. I guess that's this weekend. Oh yeah, Sting's last match. Oh yeah, that'll be good. I'll watch it. It was once the weekend hit that those memories started to flood back, that everybody was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Sting's the man. It's going to be a bummer that he's retired, which is amazing because a lot of people stick around longer than they're really welcome. A lot of people end up doing things and having people go, okay, I'm ready to kind of wrap this thing up, but not Sting. Sting is I guess, going out at the perfect time because it feels like most of us would like to see him do a couple more things. But we did a whole Sting retrospective over the weekend that you can get on the podcast feed or on the YouTube channel. And it really was like just going over his entire career and not just the things that he did as a wrestler, but the stuff that, like, the reason why that character resonates with fans so much and why it's resonated with fans for like 40 years. It's remarkable and fairly unprecedented. There's only a handful of characters, of superstars that can resonate throughout on that level. So congratulations to everything that Sting has accomplished. And if you want more Sting, you're hungry for Sting, you got Sting on the brain. We did a whole podcast just for Sting that you can check out. Speaking of checking things out, don't forget to check us out in Philadelphia. Notsam Wrestling will be live Wednesday, April the 3rd for Notsam Wrestling live in Philadelphia, kicking off WrestleMania week at the Helium Comedy Club. You can be there. You can get tickets now at notsam.com. And I hope that you're all going to be there because we'll have a lot to talk about, just like we got a lot to talk about this week. And I'm going to start with Monday because part of me wanted to come on here on Monday and do an emergency podcast because of the closing segment of Raw. I loved last Monday's closing segment of Raw. I think it's amazing that Paul Heyman has two phones, one for Roman Reigns and one for The Rock, and he uses them at both times. I've never seen anybody have phone cases dedicated to the people that they call on those phones. Like if you have a phone and you call your wife on it, you got a picture of her on the phone case. But then if you want to call your parents, that's a different phone. You'd have to pick up the phone that's in the case with your parents on it. He's got the Brahma Bull on one and the Bloodline on the other. Can you get that Brahma Bull phone case? Because I'd like to. It's amazing. I also, knowing Paul Heyman, he probably went to WWE with this idea and then really just got himself a second phone expense. So that's not a bad deal either. But what I really loved about it was that Paul Heyman came out and he was regular Paul Heyman, right? Which is great, Paul Heyman. And he comes out and he's talking about Cody Rhodes, but he's really in the driver's seat. And Cody Rhodes is an interesting character because Cody Rhodes is very respectful. Cody Rhodes respects the people who came before him, respects the legends. He always talks about Paul Heyman as Mr. Heyman. It's always acknowledged that he's kind of known Paul Heyman all his life, that Paul Heyman worked with his father, that this is somebody that Cody Rhodes has a level of admiration for. And we finally broke him. And Cody Rhodes broke in the best possible way. I mean, he kicked the you-know-what out of Grayson Waller. And then he jumped on the microphone. And instead of going like, and that's one opponent down on my way to WrestleMania, Roman Reigns, I'm coming to finish my story. And if he did that, everybody would have cheered. Everybody would have thought that was great. But no, we're deep in this thing. We're deep into this other story that nobody can figure out if it's being made up as we go or if this was the plan all along. But that's the beauty of it. That's the way great stories in wrestling are kind of told. And he's angry now, Cody. You want to know why I haven't ripped Dwayne to shreds on the microphone? And it's like, here we go. Cody Rhodes letting all of us know that his demeanor, his level of respect for The Rock, for Paul Heyman, for everybody, it's been a choice. The whole time it's been a choice. I go, yes. Cody Rhodes goes, without saying it, but if you're reading between the lines, let me explain to you. 2 guys have pinned me. I've been back now for, what is it, WrestleMania 38 to 39, 2 years, 2 years. I've been back for 2 years. And the whole time that I've been here in 2 years, 2 guys have pinned me. Both times because Solo Sikoa interfered. You know what that means? I'm good at beating people up. If you are watching the product and following the product and allowing your disbelief to be suspended, I am super good at putting a beating on people that leads to me pinning them for 3 seconds. That's how I win so many matches. So if you want to come in here and challenge me and threaten me, speak ill of me, try to decide that you're the one that's going to set the pace on how we go, I'm just going to go ahead and beat you into smithereens. You see what I just did to Grayson Waller? It wasn't tough. And when security's surrounding the ring and Cody goes, look, do whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do, do it. Take one more step, I'm beating up everybody. And Paul Heyman goes, not me though, right? And he goes, yeah, you too. And then he just starts wailing on everybody. Did you see the way he chucked that chair? That one dude just bounced right off of his face. Oh, it was brutal. But all of a sudden, you find the aggressive streak that you were looking for in Cody Rhodes. Because you're sitting there and you're thinking, man, if I spent all this time getting screwed with by the same people. Because the Bloodline started screwing with Cody before WrestleMania 39. And they have not ceased. To the point where they tried to manipulate him, apparently. That's the story that's in my brain. They tried to manipulate him into giving up his WrestleMania main event. They interfered at 39, and now at 40, they're trying to manipulate him into giving it up. And then when he goes, wait. You're not asking me to give up my main event for the benefit of the business. You're asking me to give up my main event for the benefit of you. So not only are you acting in a selfish way, but you think I'm stupid. You're acting like I'm an idiot. No, forget it then. And that's why he comes out at the press conference and says, this is BS. And now he's like, enough. Enough is enough. I want to beat up everybody. I don't lose. Now I've lost twice. That's the worst thing you could do. I'm going to beat up everybody now. And when he got on the mic and he said, Bloodline, you're not hunting me. I'm hunting you. They pushed him too far. He doesn't like to lose. Cody Rhodes hates losing. And the Bloodline pushed him too far to the point that he lost to Drew McIntyre. So guess what? Now it's on like Donkey Kong. And we're going to see. So The Rock issues the challenge on SmackDown that we talked about on the Emergency podcast. And Cody is invited to SmackDown. Seth Rollins is invited to SmackDown. So I guess I don't know if we get a response on Raw or if we wait for the response on SmackDown. We could get the response on Raw and then just get the face-to-face on SmackDown. But I think ultimately that's what it's going to be all about. The face-to-face. Because Cody Rhodes was advertised to be on SmackDown on Friday. But that was just like within the market because he was doing dark matches. And he's been advertised to be on many SmackDowns because after the SmackDown taping goes off, they usually have 2 big like main event matches just for the people who bought tickets. This week it was, I think, Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes was one of them. So he was there, but not as part of the show. Next week, he's being announced as part of the show. The Rock has announced he's going to be on SmackDown this week, then next week, then the week after. Part of the show. So, I mean, I don't know. They haven't said they're going to do a face-to-face. Maybe the idea is that they're going to keep them in separate segments next week. And then the week after, finally do the face-to-face to kind of do a slow build. It's interesting. I don't exactly know what the plan is, but I would imagine, right, because in The Rock's Instagram promo, he walked us through. He filled in the gaps that were left in the story. He walked us through how we got to Cody giving up his WrestleMania main event and how we got to Cody wanting to take it back, because that was that gap in the story. So he walked us through that on Instagram, but he did it clearly from The Rock's point of view. I would have to imagine that on Raw, we're finally going to get an explanation from Cody Rhodes. Because like I said on the emergency pod, he has tried to give us that explanation twice and been interrupted both times. So I would have to imagine that that story is going to be told because it's kind of a vital part of this whole thing. There's 2 elements to it. Why did Cody give it up? Why did he take it back? So I think that's probably the next step in this story before we go to the confrontation. But the idea that and I hope we see this side of Cody Rhodes. I hope we see the hunter side of Cody Rhodes. I hope we see the angry side of Cody Rhodes. I hope that they start booking the Bloodline in matches and Cody can go and interrupt them. Cody can upset them. I want to see Solo Sikoa, for example. I mean, there was a time when Solo Sikoa never lost. Then for some reason he beat John Cena. Now he loses all the time. But still, you could guess that Solo Sikoa really doesn't like to lose. I would like to see next week Solo Sikoa booked in a match. And Cody Rhodes comes out and costs Solo Sikoa. And he wears a black hoodie. I would like to see Jimmy Uso get booked in a match. And Cody Rhodes makes sure that Jimmy Uso loses. You know, I want Cody Rhodes, because it's got to be a different Cody Rhodes going into this WrestleMania, and we're getting the beginning of it. We got the beginning of it. I want Cody Rhodes to go, no. I'm ready to set this whole thing on fire. Like, I will absolutely come and fight you at your space. We're not doing this anymore. I'm done. That's what he said. I'm finished. He said, I used to be a fan of Dwayne, but not anymore. You know, when you start dropping the D word, if there's anything we know about WWE, when you start dropping the D word, Dwayne, when The Rock is called Dwayne, it's even worse than chanting Rocky sucks. When you chant Rocky sucks, corporate rock, heel rock comes out. When you say Dwayne, that's bad. Because, I mean, no, that's bad. That's almost pointing out promo on your forearm rock bad. That's when you get angry rock. So, I'm interested to see. I'm also interested to see if this L means anything. If the L, does the L mean something? Because there are people who don't like that I don't put as much emphasis on the L thing. And maybe I should, it's just not, I'm more of a listen to the words person than a look at the hand gesture. And there's also just but to the extent when he had the L thing up at the same time, Paul Heyman was looking at The Rock like he knew something was up. Now, he also could have been looking at The Rock like he knew something was up because The Rock just acknowledged. Clearly, Paul Heyman values The Rock, right? If there's anything we saw from that segment on SmackDown, it's that Paul Heyman has a great affinity for The Rock. That Paul Heyman understands the value in The Rock. Paul Heyman, trying to put himself in the best position. He keeps Roman Reigns in the ring. We can't leave my tribal chief. He's coming. When he announces The Rock, he lists all The Rock's credits and everything to the point that it bothers Roman Reigns. But this is not like Paul Heyman is just there. Ultimately, Paul Heyman is there for Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman knows where his bread is buttered. And as much as he needs to make sure that he's there to serve his tribal chief, ultimately, he can't be upsetting people who sit at the board of directors. And that's what I wanted to touch on, because I don't know that I touched on it enough when we did the emergency pod. The blurring of the lines in The Rock's Instagram promo was just, for me, utter brilliance. I love blurred lines. The song, the act, whatever you want to do. I love blurred lines. And The Rock, like, not only did he blur lines, but then he acknowledged that he was indeed blurring lines, meaning there are things that I'm saying here that are true. If I'm telling you to read between the lines because I'm blurring them right now, then understand this is not all in character. That said, of course, he is out of character in character, right? I mean, it's a very complex. There's meta levels to everything that we're seeing. But The Rock blurring the lines. So when he said he was blurring lines, it was in reference to Seth Rollins being the champion. The Rock is personally offended by Seth Rollins, which is why, all of this, there are people trying to, speculate wildly, which I encourage, especially if you watch the product. I encourage wild speculation. You know this. People trying to figure out what direction this is going to go in, who's going to turn on who. Some people are like, yep, that Seth Rollins thing that you laid out is perfect. Other people are like, no, that's real dumb and doesn't make any sense. And I appreciate and love both of those responses to it. Some people think The Rock's going to turn on Roman at WrestleMania. Some people think The Rock's going to turn on Roman and side with Cody at WrestleMania. That I don't see happening at all. I mean, like, first of all, that wouldn't be a good look for Cody Rhodes. Cody needs to, if Cody wins the title, which I'm not sure that he will, but if Cody wins the title, he'll need to stand up on his own and hold that title. He can't have his hand raised by The Rock. He can't have his hand raised by any other legends we'll get into in a minute. It's Cody. It's gotta be Cody. This is how Cody has been from the beginning. If you listen to any Cody interview, respect to all the legends, but this is his time. And the last thing that he wants to do is have a WrestleMania 27 type ending where, yeah, I guess he wins the title, but really it's about the legend that's raising his arm. Because that's what's going to happen if there's a legend raising his arm. I think. Maybe not, but I think. So, and also, I don't know, the idea that The Rock is a double agent for Cody, it's like, well, then why did he try to take the match? And then what? So, like, if The Rock's a double agent for Cody, then that means that The Rock tried to take the match, but then heard that the fans wanted Cody, so then decided to give the match back to Cody, but he and Cody concocted a plan over the course of 7 weeks to lure Roman Reigns into a sense of false confidence to then have Rock turn on him. So that would mean, well, yeah, and the reason we did the tag match is so we could get Bloodline rules in the match. But if it was a plan from the beginning, then Cody would just agree to the Bloodline rules. Because he would know that it's a plan from the beginning. I don't know. It's just, that one to me is very, like, retconny kind of, we're going to figure this out day of and pretend that it makes sense and then never mention it again. It does, because it doesn't. I struggle to find the logic in it. But also because I struggle to find the logic in it because The Rock has a real problem. He's got a problem with Cody because Cody talked about his family. But The Rock's got a real problem with Seth Rollins. If you watch the promo on Instagram, if you listen to the promo that he did on SmackDown about Seth being a clown, The Rock has a resentment towards Seth Rollins. This Rock does not believe that Seth Rollins is worthy of being in the conversation. The Rock talked about the fact that Netflix doesn't even know who Seth Rollins is. Nobody cares about Seth Rollins. And this is where he brought the blurring of the lines. He said, I'm the boss. I'm on the board of directors. I own everything associated with The Rock. I own my trademarks. I own the catchphrases. I own everything. He doesn't own Watch the Product, but I own everything, he says. So, he says, if you keep running your mouth, you won't be the champion anymore. It'll go to somebody else. And it's almost like, I mean, he's basically saying, I'm going to take the belt off you and put it on somebody else because I'm in charge. Because wrestling is wrestling. And you're allowed to be in that position because I've allowed it. But as the boss, I can just put the title on somebody else. Now, of course, in action, because if you just are taking that literally, you're like, oh, so it's fake. In action, if that were to come up, you'd go, yeah, he's going to put you in a match that is going to be very difficult to win, blah, blah, blah. So it all makes sense. But that's the blurring of the lines. I think the real blurring of the lines comes in the fact that, like, what other wrestler can get away in their wrestling promo with mentioning Ari Emanuel, with mentioning Ted Sarandis, mentioning the top executives from major companies, Netflix. Because he says he goes to the board. He goes, you think Ari Emanuel is sitting there asking about Seth Rollins? He goes, you think that when we're sitting at the table, he said, when we're sitting at the table, making $5 billion deals with Netflix, you think Netflix is asking, is Seth Rollins still going to be the champion? Again, now we're blurring lines. Because the idea that a company like that would be asking who's going to be the champion is like, oh, okay, we're talking about real life now. We're not, but we are. But the fact that he's mentioning real executives that would really be in that meeting, only The Rock is able to do that because that's the world that The Rock actually comes from. And it goes back to this idea that The Rock is just leaning all the way in, that he hears the fans going, oh, this guy signed on to be a member of the board of directors. And this egomaniac, one of the things that he put into his deal was, well, I get the main event of WrestleMania. So now he's bringing up the guy in charge of Endeavor, Ari Emanuel, the guy in charge of Netflix, Ted Sarandis, and is going like, yeah, I'm going to mention their names because I want you to know that those guys do business with The Rock, and they don't know who you are. That's who you're dealing with. That's not a thing. Like, that's a real resentment. And now we're talking about characters again. Now we're talking about bills for matches. Now, that's not a thing that you can just go back on and go like, oh, yeah, he's just kidding. He's just pretending. No. To bring up real life like that, it's a real life thing. I love it. I love it. When he started doing that, I love that almost as much as when he was getting butthurt about Dave LaGreca's comments on Busted Open. The whole thing was great. The whole 20 minutes was fan-freaking-tastic. Now, I mentioned another legend because Stone Cold Steve Austin's name keeps getting thrown around, and I'm sure that there is a part of Stone Cold Steve Austin that goes, look, wrestling has only gotten hotter since I returned at WrestleMania 38. As a matter of fact, if you asked me, I would say that this era that we're in right now, where things are white hot, where everything is amazing, and it just keeps getting better and better, when did this start? I would probably argue that WrestleMania 38 is the beginning of this era, where everything just starts clicking. And it's only elevated and built upon itself. But that's probably the beginning. And part of that is the return of Steve Austin. Part of that is Cody Rhodes returning. Part of that is Roman combining the titles. And that's not to say everybody loves everything that happened there, because some people hate that Roman combined the titles and held them hostage. But that's still, the fact that that is something that people hate is still a compelling story that has people coming back. And that's what makes a hot product. So, there have been, again, videos of him training. There have been rumors of him coming back. There have been interviews where he's gone, yeah, I'm not saying I wouldn't. And I am not saying he wouldn't either. But I do think I want to see Stone Cold Steve Austin back. I think that putting Steve Austin in this whole Cody Rhodes story is a miscast. Because what we're seeing with Cody Rhodes is a star rising of the current era, a star rising of this generation, not on the back of anybody. Even though he mentions his father all the time, ultimately, he's not getting the rub from somebody to go like, see, he's good. He doesn't need it. He's already the man. Secondly, even if Stone Cold Steve Austin is the biggest wrestling star of all time, which you could argue Stone Cold Steve Austin is the biggest wrestling star of all time, he's not The Rock. And that's not what this story is about. Like, The Rock being The Rock being a member of the board of directors. I don't care if the guy who beat you at 2 WrestleManias is on the side of the other guy. You're still a member of the board of directors. You're still The Rock. You're still the guy in the Netflix meetings. This is a different version of that character. To go like, yeah, but what about your old rival from 20 years ago, 25 years ago? Okay, what about him? It doesn't connect. Like, you'd have to do a lot of work to connect it, and you've already got Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins. If Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, The Rock, Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, Solo, and Jimmy, which means technically Jay as well, and you could argue CM Punk because of the injury and because you never know if he's going to pop in again. That's 10 people that are already involved in this story. With 10 people involved in this story, for me, I just don't go, and then we add Stone Cold. Feels like too much birthday to me. It feels like that would be the moment where it's like, yup, we should have ended at 5 o'clock and now it's 6:30. And it's just, we just keep getting more stuff, but we're exhausted. Whereas you could instead have Stone Cold give a rub to LA Knight, have Stone Cold give a rub to anybody. I mean, you know, I would say if Stone Cold's going to be at WrestleMania, put him on the Grayson Waller effect. Keep him far away from The Rock. 2 separate attractions. Just say, Stone Cold Steve Austin's going to be on the Grayson Waller effect. If you've got Stone Cold Steve Austin for WrestleMania, Grayson Waller goes, we're going to do the biggest Grayson Waller effect of all time. John Cena's going to be on it. Remember that when John Cena was on it? Biggest Grayson Waller effect of all time. Then there was another biggest Grayson Waller effect of all time. Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins on together. Whenever there's a big show, biggest Grayson Waller effect of all time. So how do you beat John Cena? You put Cody and Seth on at the same time as this hot story is happening. How do you beat Cody and Seth? You go to WrestleMania 40 and you put Stone Cold Steve Austin on the Grayson Waller effect. What happened 2 years ago at WrestleMania? Austin Theory ate a stunner. You have Austin Theory step to Stone Cold Steve Austin. He eats a stunner. Grayson Waller backs up. He goes, I don't want anything to do with this. Which again leans more in to what's going on with Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. And then Stone Cold Steve Austin goes, okay, you're good in my book then, kid. They cheers. Grayson Waller takes off his shoe. Time for a shoey. Stone Cold says, a shoey? Grayson Waller says, yeah. He goes, give me one of those. Stone Cold takes the shoe. Grayson Waller takes the shoe. He cheers as Stone Cold, takes a drink out of the shoe. Austin stuns him. The shoe goes flying in the air. That's what Stone Cold Steve Austin does at WrestleMania 40. Grayson Waller effect, Stone Cold stunner in the middle of a shoey. To me, that's perfect. It puts Grayson Waller on a pedestal, and then I think coming off of WrestleMania, you can get into Austin Theory versus Grayson Waller, and you can kind of turn Austin Theory babyface maybe. Shave his face again. You got to figure out something with Austin Theory. You got to give him some kind of character. You know, maybe he realizes that he's lost. Maybe he's got to start from scratch again. And part of that means not associating with people like Grayson Waller, and we go forward with Austin Theory versus Grayson Waller at WrestleMania Backlash. Stone Cold gets us there. Just a thought. Speaking of post-WrestleMania, I went on Raw Talk and I went on The Bump. And I was talking about Dominik Mysterio as a threat to Gunther's Intercontinental title reign. And I know you're probably thinking, well, it's old Sammy Heel Muffins is just healing it up again on WWE TV. And there is something, I can't help it sometimes. I can't help it. But that's not to say that I don't mean the things that I say. Hear me out. Hear me out. Coming off of WrestleMania, there is no doubt in my mind that Rhea Ripley is going to be a babyface. I don't think Dominik Mysterio is going to be in the corner of Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania. I think Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch happens without Dominik Mysterio. Just as, by the way, Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax happened without Dominik Mysterio. I think that there's no reason to do a full-on separation. Right? Like, I don't think that Dominik benefits from it. I don't think that Rhea benefits from it. I think the idea of people just kind of moving on from it is what happened. It's the best way to do it. Unless you've got somebody that Dominik is going to be paired with that's going to be Rhea's next opponent. But even then, I feel like Rhea will be so big coming off of WrestleMania that it's almost like the best thing that you can do for both her and Dominik, if you're going to split them, is just kind of let them drift apart. So the question is, how do you keep Dominik's heat? Because Dominik's heat is ultimately predicated upon, number one, the jail bits and Rey Mysterio, of course. But number two, the fact that he's associated with Rhea Ripley. It is absolutely essential to Dominik's heel heat that he's associated with Rhea Ripley. So when he is no longer associated with Rhea Ripley, who's like the best, right? If the best is sitting there and she's saying, no, that's my dude, I'm vouching for everything that guy says, then you've got heat. Rhea already is going, Dominik, this isn't a good idea, and Dominik's doing it anyway. You can feel that. And that's, again, because Rhea's on her way to babyface him. So how do you maintain Dominik as a hot heel? You have to. He's the greatest. He's just goated forever. I personally think that we are very close to Gunther as well being a straight-up babyface. Like, not that he's done things that would make him a traditional babyface, but people just love Gunther too much. I think that's the direction that we're headed in. I also think that we're headed in a direction where Gunther is going to be in the conversation for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. That's just the inevitability of all of this. So, what do you do with the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania? I think that there's a good chance that there will be a multi-person match. And I think if there is a multi-person match, odds are Gunther wins the multi-person match. Because the only reason to end Gunther's Intercontinental title reign is to push that energy onto somebody else. And it's very difficult to push Gunther's energy onto somebody else if that person wins in a multi-person match. It's just a different vibe completely. Gunther can take a loss, by the way. He won't lose anything. So I think you do a multi-person match either on Raw or SmackDown before WrestleMania. And that leads to the one-on-one Intercontinental title match. So if you're doing a one-on-one Intercontinental title match with Gunther, who are the players involved, right? First one is Chad Gable. That's a layup. The idea of Gunther versus Chad Gable at WrestleMania is phenomenal. The idea of those two having a WrestleMania match, it's a forever thing. It's awesome. The idea of Chad Gable being the one to beat Gunther, incredible, awesome. There won't be a disappointed person in the house, including myself. I'll go, that was great. I'm glad that happened. But ultimately, when you look at what comes next, that feels like the biggest moment for Chad Gable. I don't know if what happens with the Intercontinental title after that is the biggest thing you can possibly do coming off of a Gunther loss. With all due respect to everybody involved. Maybe I'm wrong. You could, because Chad Gable is the man. But that's just how I feel. If there wasn't other parties involved, I'd go, yeah, layup. Give it to Chad Gable. There are just other parties involved that I feel more strongly about. Sami Zayn is another one, right? Sami Zayn has been on that quest to get a big win, to get a championship, to get to WrestleMania. So, of course, Sami Zayn getting the Intercontinental opportunity at WrestleMania as the underdog would be huge for him. It would work with this character completely. And the idea of Sami Zayn beating Gunther at WrestleMania is a moment of triumph that we would all love for Sami. There's nothing better than a Sami Zayn moment of triumph. That said, is Sami Zayn beating Gunther a bigger moment than Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens beating the Usos in the main event? I would say no. I would say Sami and KO going to the main event of WrestleMania after the build that they had going into that WrestleMania and winning the tag team championship is bigger than if Sami were to beat Gunther. And if that's the case, do you want to use that Gunther moment on the one person who it would be big for, but not the biggest? For me, I don't know. Sheamus is one. Sheamus has never been the Intercontinental Champion. It'd be great. I just feel like, and by the way, and it'd be a great match. I compared the match that Sheamus and Gunther had at Clash at the Castle to Shakespeare. It was so good. The story that was told in that match is one of my favorite storytelling matches ever. Between Clash at the Castle and the WrestleMania Triple Threat last year, I do feel like I've seen it. That's not to say I don't want to see it again. I just feel like I've seen it. So, with all of that said, who's the one person who, if they beat Gunther, it would be the most impactful thing you could do? And it would do the most for the show as a whole coming off of WrestleMania. I would argue that if you want Dominik to stay as hot as ever, if you want Dominik to continue to get booed in every building that he goes into, and if you want the Dominik villainous persona to continue to grow, you have him get a cheap victory over Gunther. You have him spoil the whole thing at WrestleMania. Dominik Mysterio, the least deserving person of a WrestleMania moment on the planet, gets a WrestleMania moment. Are you kidding me? That, to me, has legs for months and months and months. And besides that, if Damian Priest comes out like he's going to cash in, but instead just wallops Gunther with the briefcase, and that's how Dominik Mysterio is able to get the pin, and then the next night, the Raw after WrestleMania, because I don't see Priest cashing in at WrestleMania, but if Priest cashes in Raw after WrestleMania and becomes the World Heavyweight Champion, all of a sudden, coming out of WrestleMania, Dominik Mysterio is the Intercontinental Champion. He's got all the momentum in the world. And Gunther can chase multiple people. He can go after Dominik if he wants to, but he doesn't have to. You can maybe have Imperium split up. He can go after Ludwig Kaiser. Doesn't have to. Or he can go after the World Heavyweight Champion. I would probably give it a beat because I'd want Damian Priest to have at least a little time with it before Gunther came and clobbered him. But what if you have Damian Priest win the title, but you do an angle with Ludwig Kaiser on that Monday? So in France, you do Gunther versus Ludwig Kaiser, or you do Gunther versus both of them, Imperium, if you need to. But I think you could do Gunther versus Ludwig Kaiser and try to push Ludwig a little bit. And then you have Gunther get his revenge on Damian Priest and chase the World Heavyweight Champion. And what by then you're at Money in the Bank. Maybe you go into Money in the Bank in Toronto and have Damian Priest have to defend against Gunther. All the while, Dominik Mysterio is the most hated guy in the world because of everything that happened at WrestleMania. Look, maybe I'm just trying to convince myself. Maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree, but to me, I would just love to see it so much. I think it'd be great. We got some info from 2K, by the way. I spent a lot of time this week. I got a copy of WWE 2K24, and I've made it through the showcase of the Immortals where you redo WrestleMania matches in the game. They have Hogan and Andre, Hogan and Macho, Hogan and Warrior, Brett and Piper, Shawn and Razor, ladder match, WrestleMania 10. Then they skip a bunch and go to like WrestleMania 17, Austin and Rock. They have WrestleMania 20, Angle and Guerrero. It gets real fun towards the end. Because towards the end, you get Austin and KO from WrestleMania 38, which is so fun to redo. You get, going into WrestleMania 39, you get Charlotte and Rhea. You get Bianca and Becky. I mean, Bianca and Asuka. And you get Roman and Cody. WrestleMania 35, you get the Becky, Charlotte, Ronda triple threat. There was one other real fun one that I was happy was there. Let's see. It was like they did Brock and Taker from WrestleMania 30. It was 31, 32, 33. I don't know. There was one other really fun one that I liked. And then there's one bonus one at the end that I'm working on. But the most intriguing thing about all this 2K news to me was when they announced their DLC packs, the superstars that you're going to be able to download for the game later. Because the DLC packs, these are obviously people who have some kind of WWE merchandise deal or something. This is something that we could potentially get. So the first DLC pack is available May 15th, and it's the ECW Punk pack. So they have CM Punk coming to this game on May 15th, which is amazing. I would imagine that they must have some kind of build of his moves and stuff from way back when, maybe? I don't know. Has 2K been doing the games that long, or was it some different company? I don't know. But apparently they're going to be ready by May to have CM Punk in this game already, which is nuts because it was the end of November. That's 6 months that he's been in the company, and he's in the game. But it's the ECW alumni in this pack that I'm like, oh, wait a second here. So you have the Dudley Boys, Bubba Ray Dudley and Devon Dudley, which is big because they have not had a Legends deal. And so they're back, I think. They're already in the Hall of Fame because that's what I'm really looking at, right? Because WrestleMania is in Philadelphia. Terry Funk's in the Hall of Fame, I believe. But I don't remember the last time maybe Terry Funk's been, but the idea that ECW Terry Funk is going to be in this game. My Faction content, ECW Paul Heyman manager card. But the one that really got me, the Sandman. The Sandman is going to be in 2K24 on May 15th. Is the Sandman going into the Hall of Fame this year? Is the idea, I mean, it would make sense if maybe they're going to put ECW in the Hall of Fame. And it's going to be like the Dudleys and Sandman are going to be there to accept it. Maybe Tommy Dreamer will make an appearance. But the idea that you might be able to get a Hall of Fame Sandman shirt in the WrestleMania Superstore, maybe I'm just getting excited. Maybe it has nothing to do with it, and maybe it's just DLC content. But then in June, you have Honky Tonk Man, Jimmy Hart, Sensational Sherry, which is awesome. Post Malone, which is, fun. Headbangers. Now, I don't think the Headbangers will go into the Hall of Fame this year, but we haven't had the Headbangers around in forever. We didn't have any vintage Headbangers merch. We haven't had Mattel figures of the Headbangers. 2024, we're going to have new Headbangers stuff coming out. That's super fun. The July pack is Pat McAfee and a bunch of his co-hosts, which is great. The September pack is super fun. Carlito, Dragon Lee, Jade Cargill, which she's only wrestled one Royal Rumble. That's all she's wrestled. So who knows what she'll do, but this doesn't come out until September. So Kairi Sane, Lyra Valkyria, Michelle McCool, and Nia Jax. But then this one is super interesting. This one isn't until November, all the way at the end of the year. DDP, Lex Luger, Mr. Perfect, the Iron Sheik, and the Great Muta. Now, if this means that Mattel is going to be able to do great, and I don't know, it might not be the same deal. This might be a straight deal with 2K, but we're going to get the Great Muta in a WWE video game. We've got him in the Hall of Fame already, but the idea that that connection is building is very exciting to me. I like it very much. I think it's very, very cool. Before we get to emails and stuff, speaking of legends, we do want to say rest in peace to two people. Well, I guess, yeah. Ole Anderson, we lost this week. Ole Anderson, who, of course, legend in the business, OG member of the Four Horsemen, and other tag teams and everything. But a big part of it, as well as a booker who, depending on when and who you ask, one of the great bookers, one of the questionable bookers, but a legend nonetheless. Somebody that when you talk about that golden age of territory wrestling and the NWA and the Horsemen, Ole Anderson is a name synonymous with it. And we also lost Virgil. Virgil, who is a WWE legend, who, I have my storied career with from doing radio appearances and telling Virgil stories and everything. But talk about leaning in. This was a guy who understood when you figured out you got a gimmick, just lean all the way into the gimmick. He became a meme. But when you think about his wrestling career, he was tied in to so much. That's one of the reasons why I think everybody remembers him, because of how much he was actually tied into, right? He comes into the WWE as the $1 Million Man's bodyguard, Virgil, wearing that shiny suit with the sleeves off and them big guns showing. But like Ted DiBiase being one of the iconic characters of the late 80s going into the 90s, and Virgil being right there for all of it. When Ted DiBiase was going after Hogan, when Ted DiBiase was calling people out of the crowd and ruining their shot at $100, when Ted DiBiase was doing everything that made Ted DiBiase, Virgil was right there. SummerSlam 91, a lot of people's favorite SummerSlam. That was one that changed everything. Match made in heaven, match made in hell. Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect. And then you had that triumphant moment where Virgil finally won the $1 Million Championship. You go a year after, SummerSlam 92. Hugely iconic event. Wembley Stadium, 80,000 people, outdoors, especially for the era, for the early 90s. What a spectacle for the WWE. Virgil was a part of it, of course. He had his match with Nails. Go to the end of 1992. Who was Yokozuna's first pay-per-view opponent when it came time to introduce Yokozuna to the match, to the masses? At the Royal Rumble in 93, his first Royal Rumble, he won the thing. At WrestleMania 9, his first WrestleMania, he won the world title from Bret Hart. He lost it to Hulk Hogan right after. We're not talking about that. Then, before that, it was Survivor Series in 1992 that he made his debut. Who did he make his pay-per-view debut against? Virgil. And then when the industry changes, when the industry shifts, when you think that Virgil with Ted DiBiase, with the $1 Million title, with SummerSlam 92, with Yokozuna, that Virgil's done everything that he can do in terms of being a part of wrestling history. In 1996, the NWO invades WCW, and who is closely associated with the NWO for years? Vincent, a.k.a. Virgil. And then he becomes an internet phenomenon, puts meat sauce on the map. Rest in peace to both Ole Anderson and Virgil. I also wanted to make a couple quick notes. I love Kevin Owens and Randy Orton together. Kevin Owens and Randy Orton as a union, I think that only leads me to believe more that there will be a triple threat at WrestleMania, that we're looking at Logan Paul versus Randy Orton versus Kevin Owens. I think Randy Orton and Kevin Owens come together. Strange bedfellows. Randy Orton and Kevin Owens both hate Logan Paul, but we get to a place where Randy Orton and Kevin Owens both want the same thing, which is Logan Paul's United States Championship. Nick Aldis makes the match triple threat. So now from Logan's perspective, oh no, these two guys are best friends. They're the two most dangerous people on the roster. They're going to rip my head off. But from their perspectives, look, we're buds. We got the same goal, but also you can't trust either one of us. We're going to go out there for ourselves. Kevin Owens, you never trust that dude as a tag team partner. He'll turn on you. Randy Orton, you never trust that dude as a tag team partner. He'll turn on you. Now they're unionized to face Logan Paul, but also had the same singular goal. Interesting. And shout out to Tiffany Stratton, who's just absolutely crushing it right now. I haven't seen anybody take to this that quickly. I mean, Tiffany Stratton is doing Kurt Angle type of things. Not the fact that she's an Olympic gold medalist, but the fact that she comes out of the blue. No experience, no nothing. gets a beginner's course, and 2 years in, she's on the main roster with people going, what's she doing at WrestleMania? It's an incredible thing to see, and an incredible thing to watch. I love how many of you are watching, and I love how many of you are emailing. If you want to be a part of our email segment on any given week, email notsamwrestling@gmail.com, our email address. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com. We got a ton of emails again this week. Look, anytime there is a need for an emergency podcast, you can bet that there's also going to be a ton of emails. So we're just going to start going through these, and I'm sure some of them. Why you write these page-long emails, guys? Some of them I'm going to know. Jake writes in with the subject, is there no chance this was the plan all along? Sam, longtime listener, watcher, first-time emailer. I appreciate that. A little about me, I'm in my early 40s, been watching the product most of my life. Great. The first real wrestling memory is of The Undertaker beating Hogan with Flair's help. Yeah, slid that chair right in the ring. Really enjoy your podcast and the way you present your takes. I appreciate that. My email is pertaining to the whole Rock Cody thing, but more behind the scenes. Okay, I don't love that, but I'll entertain it. Everyone is talking about the WWE had to pivot or change directions due to fan outrage, and that absolutely could be the case. Probably is. But I'm surprised that no one is at least entertaining the idea that this was all part of the bigger plan. Hear me out. What if the whole thing had been planned from day one to make Cody the new people's champion with The Rock's approval? Again, I don't love Cody being put into a nostalgia context. I don't love that. But I'm saying I don't love that language, but what you've set up is not something I'm necessarily against. I just don't think they would have shown Cody's face in the ring and walking up the ramp with the sad emotion the night he gave up his wrestling. I know exactly what you're talking about. That felt purposeful and everything counts. I 100% agree with that. That's one of the red flags for me where I'm like, I'm entertaining all ideas right now. Also, WWE passed out "We Want Cody" signs at the very next television show. I don't know if that's true. I don't know that WWE passed out "We Want Cody" signs. I know that like some wrestling journalists said that, but there's a very good chance that fans printed those signs and passed them out. That happens all the time. So there is no evidence that I've seen that WWE passed those signs out. It's possible, but just because some website said it absolutely does not mean it's true. So we're going to strike that from the record. Less than 70 hours later on Raw, the same Raw that Cole and McAfee both repeatedly said that they wanted to see Cody versus Rock, Pat even gave an incredible and impassioned speech on why Cody has won over the fans of professional wrestling. True, but that's also 70 hours later where they know what the backlash is. And I'm just being devil's advocate here. Like, by Raw, they knew that they were doing something. So they definitely knew that they were going to acknowledge the backlash, and they did. I find it hard to believe that they completely changed their plans in less than 70 hours. Well, they would have had to if you believe that they changed their plans. Or at least they would have had to know that they're changing their plans. Because they didn't fully change the plan. They just know by the time we get to the press conference, we'll figure this out. But in the meantime, we need to acknowledge the backlash because we're going to change the plan. And the backlash is coming fast and furious. Again, devil's advocate. They want fans to think that they made the difference by social media. Yet, look, I think that it's hard to believe that they didn't know there would be backlash. Also, maybe they didn't know there would be this much backlash. I am with you in the sense that both ideas are absolutely worth entertaining. And if you hear somebody that will not listen to one idea or the other, I think they're being very close-minded because there are red flags on both sides. For me to say, clearly they had to pivot, I go, what about this, that, and this? Then I'd go, well, clearly they knew all along. Yeah, but what about that, that, and that? That's what makes this one of the more compelling WrestleMania builds in many years. Floyd writes in, first order of business. Ahoy, Sam. First order of business. I acknowledge you as my podcast chief. I appreciate that. You should all be doing that. It looks like WWE are building to a multi-man match at WrestleMania for the Intercontinental title. Okay, I think we covered that. Who's your pick to walk away? Okay, yeah. We covered that. Appreciate it, though. Kyle writes in, Big fan, first-time emailer. After SmackDown this week, I'm so sure that The Rock is going to turn on Roman at WrestleMania. Something about the way he acknowledged Roman Reigns. I think that at WrestleMania Saturday, Cody and Seth will actually lose with The Rock pinning Cody. This sets up Bloodline rules for WrestleMania Sunday. During the main event, Roman will be poised to retain. He and The Rock will be standing over a battered Cody. The Rock will send the rest of the Bloodline back and say, I got this. Suddenly, The Rock gets back into the ring, hits Roman with a rock bottom and a people's elbow on Roman. Cody hits Crossroads on Roman, and the Bloodline comes back down to the ring. The Rock stands in their way and tells them that things have changed. Cody hits another Crossroads and gets the win. Cody and The Rock shake hands in the middle of the ring, and The Rock puts the title around Cody's waist. We find out that this was all part of the plan. Like, this doesn't make sense. So this takes everything away from Cody's win. If Cody wins WrestleMania this way, then this is a story about The Rock and Roman Reigns, and Cody is an afterthought. And the idea that Cody finishes his story and The Rock's reign, Roman's reign comes to an end in an afterthought to the actual story, which is The Rock and Roman Reigns, simply doesn't work for me. That's my problem with that. This does nothing for Cody. The Rock beat Roman Reigns here and gave the victory to Cody to screw over Roman for whatever reason. Doesn't make sense, especially since Cody did insult the family. Doesn't make sense. I think The Rock will turn on Roman Reigns. I think there is fishy stuff going on. But if you pay attention to the Bloodline, they plant seeds, and these seeds are not plants that bloom within 3 weeks. These seeds are plants that bloom 3-4 months later. I think that The Rock will turn on Roman. I think The Rock will turn on Roman down the road. I think this is a long play. I don't think we're getting another... For the idea that The Rock is going to announce a year in advance, I'm going to take Roman on next year at WrestleMania, is like the exact same thing The Rock has already done. Why would he do the exact same thing again? He's literally said, I want to do something different, not the exact same thing I did. That's why I think Roman Reigns wins. We tell a story. Sometime in the next year, Rock finally turns on Roman. Roman becomes a baby. And this is also The Rock becoming a babyface. Like, the Bloodline's going to side with The Rock. Paul Heyman's going to side with The Rock. That's clear if you look at what's going on. To me. I think The Rock is a heel and Roman is a babyface by next year's WrestleMania. Roman will have lost the title by then, maybe. And to do that, you got The Rock turning on Roman with the Bloodline on his side. That's how I see it. But I think that's how I see it. Adam writes in, hey, Sam, massive fan of the podcast and appreciate the commitment to churning out emergency podcasts at the rate you have recently. This is the third podcast in the last 3 days. A lot of top-level superstars over the years never became world champion in WWE, and there are currently a lot of top-level stars who people believe deserve their first world title victory. So it can be a simple yes or no. Will these superstars become a world champion in the future? Now, this is both the WWE Championship and the World Heavyweight Championship, meaning it's either Roman or Seth's title. Cody Rhodes, yes. Jey Uso, I really hope so. I'm going to say yes, and I say that from my heart. Not necessarily from my brain, but from my heart. I badly want to see Jey Uso become the World Heavyweight Champion. Badly. So I'm saying yes to that. Jimmy Uso, no. Solo Sikoa, it's too early to tell. Damian Priest, I certainly hope so. Because otherwise, I hate when Money in the Bank winners don't win the title. Sami Zayn, yes. Shinsuke Nakamura, no. LA Knight, no. Logan Paul, maybe. Dominik Mysterio, no. And that's only because there's a lot of superstars right now, and these title reigns are not short. LA Knight one might be a little bit controversial. I think he'll win the United States Championship. I just as long as these title reigns have been, I don't see a path of him getting there. He could. He could be a WWE champion for sure. Ultra Boy, I think it's time to officially make Let Them Cook the official fourth rule of Notsam Wrestling. It's possible. Also, I am someone that feels like Seth is going to cost Cody, but I recently thought of the possibility, what if Triple H cost Cody because The Rock threatened his job, similar to the storyline between The Big Show and The Authority? What do you think? I don't like it because Triple H can't wrestle. I think the last thing that you want to do is make people want to see Triple H wrestle, and people already kind of want to see Triple H wrestle. Triple H can't wrestle. And if you can't wrestle, you shouldn't be costing people matches because what's the payoff? Thomas, love the podcast and love WWE right now. So many great stories woven throughout the card. My problem is that you brought up multiple times last week Roman keeping the title thanks to Seth. That sounds like a terrible idea, even if you keep talking about that fake Hulk Hogan record that doesn't matter and shouldn't matter. Well, it does matter because WWE puts it out there. So it matters. I mean, if you watch you might not care. But once WWE enters it into canon, it matters. And, I mean, fake Hulk Hogan, quote-unquote, record, what's fake? Hulk Hogan held the title for a certain number of time. Right now, the longest reigning champions are like this. Bruno Sammartino, Bob Backlund, Hulk Hogan, Roman Reigns. If Roman Reigns holds the title until September, it goes Bruno Sammartino, Bob Backlund, Roman Reigns. That's a real life thing. Sorry. I know there are people who want to make it so that it's not real, but that's a real thing. You can not care. You can say it's not worth all this. That's fine. But the idea that it's not real isn't true. If they go with your story, they risk alienating the fan base. They're not alienating the fan base, dude. You just said how much you love WWE right now. They made Cody lose last year, and people said they weren't going to keep watching. More people watching than ever. And people will tune out. They won't tune out because it will never be Cody's time. It will be Cody's time. They won't tune out, and Cody will survive because he's the man. He rules hard. Even if it was last WrestleMania, which it was, at some point, the babyface needs to win, and enough is enough. That's true. That's 100% true. A better idea, okay, I'm willing to listen to better ideas, is Roman and Rock win on Saturday, further stacking Sunday's odds and Cody's Avengers. All the people of Bloodline have screwed over. Okay. Help prevent the Bloodline rules match from getting out of control. Yeah, but if it's Bloodline rules, because people have already presented that, if it's Bloodline rules, then the Bloodline can say they're all banned from ringside. Only the Bloodline's allowed at ringside. It's not no holds barred. It's Bloodline rules. The Bloodline makes the rules. Seth loses to Drew, and that leads to Seth versus Cody because Seth says, I worried too much about being a Shield instead of being my own. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Rock can come back to Roman and say, I stacked the deck and you still failed. So you're getting to the same result as me, just in a different road, which I appreciate. And I appreciate that people want Cody to win. And I appreciate the Avengers finish. And it's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not yelling at your idea. But if that were to happen, it would probably be cool enough that I wouldn't question it because it would just be super fun. But also, you would have to ask, why wouldn't Bloodline rules mean that only Bloodline people are coming out? It's not no holds barred. It's Bloodline rules. There will only be Bloodline people there. Because if Bloodline rules meant that all of Cody's friends can come to ringside, then what would be the point of doing Bloodline rules? That wouldn't benefit them at all. What you could do, okay, now we're cooking, okay. What you could do is, if you're going to say Cody's going to win the title, Bloodline, they lose. Because if Cody wins, they should lose night one. If Cody's going to win on night two, Cody should lose on night one. And Roman should pin Cody. If you do Bloodline rules, you could have members of the Bloodline come out and help Cody. Jey Uso is Bloodline. Maybe Rikishi doesn't like the way things have gone. Maybe you have a new member of the Bloodline. Maybe Solo Sikoa. Maybe that's the moment that Solo Sikoa decides it's time to take out the tribal chief. Maybe Solo Sikoa wants to be the tribal chief. And so he takes out Roman. Like you would have to tell a story where the Bloodline takes down Roman, which I'd be okay. I mean, the idea of an emperor being taken down by their own people is something that has happened throughout history, and it is an absolutely compelling story. I don't think you can go Avengers, and I love the idea of Avengers, don't get me wrong, but just by going by the letter of the law, if it's Bloodline rules, I don't think you can go Avengers. But the idea of either certain members that are technically Bloodline because they are blood coming out to help Cody, like Jey Uso and maybe other people that we don't know. Maybe Ava Raine comes out. Maybe Naomi, who knows? But I think the idea, or the Bloodline themselves taking out Roman Reigns, and then maybe The Rock is mad at the Bloodline, but then The Rock ends up siding with the Bloodline. There's wiggle room there. There is wiggle room there. I'm listening. I'm listening to you, is what I'm telling you. Shay Boogie writes in, always going to start by giving you your flowers. Best podcast to start my week. Your ability to connect with your listeners, especially recently, has been incredible. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for what you do. P.S. I had a really bad email last week. My apologies. You repeating it was worse for me than you. Then he writes in, Drew as a heel is unbelievable. Setting up stories down the line while also having a Mania match is incredible. It is so good. Drew McIntyre right now is even better than he was in 2020. It's amazing watching Drew right now. That being said, my first email to you was about Montez Ford and how impressed I was with his chamber match last year. Yeah, I want to see more of this. Great. I'm thinking of having a solo heel turn of some sort would be very beneficial. How do we break him away from the Authors of Pain? Well, I told you, I think last week, or I told somebody at some point. I think Montez Ford, you don't want to break him away until he's undeniable, until the people are like clamoring for it. And they will. I think that they will with Montez Ford. But you gotta let him have his moments to shine over the course of several months, to the point where, Shay, everyone's thinking like you. And everyone's like, when is this guy going to go off on his own? And then he does, and he's either a heel or a babyface. But if he does it too early, where not everybody's ready for it, and he's a heel, but everybody likes the babyface is better, it won't be any good for him. So the timing's got to be very delicate on that, especially as crowded as the roster is right now. A lot of big stars. Andrew writes in, longtime listener, second-time emailer. I'm glad we finally are at a place where top stars in the WWE are getting the nod over legends. That's my point when it comes to big spots on pay-per-views. But I just want to see an Avengers Endgame WrestleMania. I'm with you, dude. It's very Avengers what's going on right now. I'm talking about every babyface who the Bloodline has wronged heading out there to fuck up Roman and Rock. I want Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, Rikishi. I want full family drama and superstars and legends sticking it to the Bloodline. We do have to get that at some point. Get Stone Cold. I'm not with the Stone Cold thing. It makes no sense. He has no Bloodline connection. Cena, Triple H, HBK, even... No. It has to be people that the Bloodline has actually affected. Cena, maybe, but it's a little bit of a distraction. Triple H and Shawn Michaels, no. Hogan, no. I think you go Cody, Rollins, Sammy, Jey Uso. I'm fine with Rikishi, Kevin Owens. You could put Orton in there, depending on what you do with him with the Logan Paul match. You can definitely put Orton in there because of the multi-person match at Royal Rumble. Yeah, I mean, I think there are enough people that you don't need to just add randos in. But if you also, don't forget, if you just destroy, that's a destruction of the Bloodline, which maybe it's time to destroy the Bloodline, and that's fine. What's The Rock doing on Friday? What's The Rock doing after WrestleMania? I don't want to get rid of The Rock. Kevin writes in, hey, Not Sam, I'm Not Kevin from Sweden. Oh, amazing. Love your podcast. I just want to share my love of a small thing in wrestling with someone. Who better than the last professional broadcaster? I'll tell you who better. No one. When a wrestler who's not officially in a match gets caught by the referee trying to interfere, the ref confronts them, spins his hand around, and sends them out of here. The often over-the-top reaction that the wrestler gives to the consequence is my favorite. Can you think of any best kicked out by a referee sell jobs? Yeah, I mean, if you go back to last year's WrestleMania, Solo was pretty good, just in the fact that he stared the referee. I just think it's so funny. I love that, too, because the sell job, that for some reason, the you're out of here, you're banned from ringside referee call is the only referee call in wrestling that every superstar is helpless against. Every referee call can get broken. Every referee can just get not listened to. Every rule gets broken. It happens all the time. But for some reason, the you're out of here, it can never be broken. Once it's stated, there is no wrestler powerful enough to beat the "you're out of here." And they look at the referee like, "You found my weakness. You left me completely helpless." And then, of course, Solo just comes back anyway with a hoodie on. Simone writes in, hey, Sam, hope you and the family are doing great. I have a couple quickish points, which I would love your opinion, okay? Paul Heyman on Friday was the star of the Bloodline segment with his body language and facial expressions. At the beginning, in awe of The Rock, then he looked almost suspicious of him. I think there will be a key. That will be the key of the Roman versus Rock feud developing through the year. When will he betray? When will he betray Roman? Okay, I kind of went into that. I don't see WrestleMania developing like you. Here's my idea. During the tag match, Drew interferes against Seth, helping Rock and Roman win. I don't love that. Cody, against all odds, looks like he's prevailing. Then a hooded guy interferes at CM Punk, who then shakes Heyman's hand and leaves. I hate that. Aftermath, Punk and Cody meet at the Money in the Bank ladder match, which people give these like fantasy bookings and they just go, and then 3 months later this happened. What are we doing for 3 months? You just set something up on April, what is it? 3rd, 4th, 5th, April 7th. You set that up. And then they're like, okay, so on April 7th, Punk will screw Cody, and then they'll have a match in July. What are we doing for April, May, and June? Come on. Punk loses. Okay, so Punk will win that. Punk loses versus Roman at SummerSlam. Why is Punk facing Roman? So Punk is a heel who costs Cody Rhodes. Then he loses to Cody Rhodes. Now, a month later, he's a babyface against Roman Reigns at SummerSlam. Cody wins versus Roman on SmackDown September 13th at Madison Square Garden when Roman ties Hogan's record. Okay, so you're booking the buildings now. Cody versus Punk is the main event of WrestleMania 41 for the title. Come on. Just read it back to yourself, Simone. I don't even have... Just read it back to yourself. Ahmed from Riyadh, my man. All the way from Riyadh. I hope you've been to the WWE experience. Tell us all about it, dude. Sam, I'm concerned with what will happen if Cody doesn't win and finish the story. From what I understand from The Rock, the whole thing was mainly driven by fans. Cody Crybaby's reaction. What if Cody loses, which is what you believe will happen, and the reaction is worse this time around? I believe it will be worse, but I believe Cody will survive it. Do you wonder what would happen if CM Punk was not injured? What would Seth be doing? What would Drew be doing? What would The Rock be doing? Okay. I'm assuming you're asking me to figure that out right now. So if Punk was not injured, it would be Seth versus Punk, clearly. Although they were kind of setting up. So, you wonder if they really did want to do Rock versus Roman Reigns, and they realized that before the Royal Rumble, were they setting up to do Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk and then Cody versus Seth? Maybe. Because Cody won the Royal Rumble, and I don't think that was an audible. There's no way it was an audible. They had the T-shirts printed. It doesn't make any sense. So Cody was getting a title match. If the plan was Rock versus Roman, maybe they were going to do Rock versus Roman, Cody versus Seth, Punk versus Drew. And that's why they started doing the Punk and Drew stuff. Really interesting to think about. Really interesting to think about. Steven writes in. Steve from Jersey. This is how I booked the Bloodlines WrestleMania. Night 1, Jimmy versus Jay. Solo interferes. Jimmy wins. That sucks. I mean, it's not like it's a bad booking. It makes sense. It just sucks that would be a real bummer. It would be a real bummer. Big tag match. Main event. Jimmy comes to interfere. Jay stops him. Solo comes out, gives the Bloodline the win. Seth is furious with Rock for cheating. Okay. Night 2, Drew versus Seth. Bloodline interference. Drew takes advantage and beats Seth. New World Heavyweight Champion like The Rock promised. Okay, so you're saying the Bloodline interferes on behalf of The Rock because The Rock hates Seth Rollins. Steven, you're thinking, and I don't mind it. Main event night 2, Rock versus Cody. Bloodline rules, tons of shenanigans. Jimmy comes out. Jay stops him. Solo comes out. Seth stops him. Rock comes out. Looks like the Bloodline has the edge once again and bang Claymore to The Rock. Drew came out to even. Drew admits Seth was right about the Bloodline needing to be gone. Here's why, and then the new title. It's not going to be roasted because you know why I don't agree with it, but I feel like you have thought about it. Like they're in the details. You are watching the product. You're listening to what's being said and acting as if. My only problem with that is you're turning Drew, and as complicated and shenanigan-y as that is, if it's Bloodline rules, you've got to believe it's full of shenanigans. So if you're going to have the Bloodline win the tag match, you're getting shenanigans. So I'm not mad at any of it. The only thing I don't like is Drew turning babyface at the end of the night. Drew's a heel right now. There's no reason. If Cody just, I don't see Drew becoming a babyface. That's the only thing that I don't like there. Otherwise, I'll listen to all of it. Clyde writes it. First of all, thanks for the Twitter reply. Love the emergency podcast. Hope the family's doing well. First time emailer. You're the man, Clyde. Question. Historically at WrestleMania, primarily every fifth WrestleMania main event, every world title has changed hands except WrestleMania 25. Triple H over Orton. The face won and became champion. WrestleMania 5, Hogan over Savage. WrestleMania 10, Hart over Yoko. WrestleMania 15, Austin over Rock. WrestleMania 20, WrestleMania 25, 25th anniversary is above. WrestleMania 30, Bryan over Orton and Batista. WrestleMania 35, Lynch over Charlotte and Ronda. I know your speculation has Roman winning at the 40th anniversary, but knowing these facts, do you still believe? Yeah, I don't think that this is something they're doing on purpose. I mean, most WrestleManias, the babyface wins. Some of them he retains. Some of them he gets the title. There's not that many WrestleManias where the heel wins. I don't think that they specifically plan out, okay, every fifth year we have to do it because the number is divisible by 5. That's not a thing that's happening. Like, they're going to go where the story dictates and where they want the story to go. It's not just about what happens at the end of WrestleMania 40. It's what happens coming out of WrestleMania 40. Because as much as the WWE, this is something you've got to realize. As much as the WWE needs WrestleMania 40 to be the biggest WrestleMania of all time, they need that as well as they need WrestleMania 41 to be the biggest WrestleMania of all time. Then they need WrestleMania 42 to be the biggest WrestleMania of all time. Then WrestleMania 43, I think you know where I'm going. So the idea is not just what makes the greatest moment in Philadelphia on that night. It's what makes the biggest moment that sets us up for where we're going to where we'll eventually get to a year from now. And I think that that is the space that we're working in with the WWE right now. Let's go to Martin. Hope the fam is doing well. I really appreciate that you guys say that stuff. I think that Logan will defend against both KO and RKO at Mania in a 3-way. I agree. I think next week on SmackDown, we'll get KO and RKO versus A-Town Down Under. I think that would be a good call. And I think in that match, after the match, Logan will attack both, leading to Aldis to announce a 3-way. I don't know if that's what will make him announce it. I think like I said before, I think he'll make the match, and I could see that tag match happening. Let's go to Will. Sam, lately as I watch the product, I start to imagine there's a Not Sam employee out there that sits next to a red button who hits it multiple times a week, springing you into action by setting off the Not Sam siren. If there isn't one, I'd like to volunteer. I like that idea, Will. I think that's a very good idea. That way, when I just hear the siren, I know it's time. So here's what I got. Seth and Drew, not that it needs it, but what if the special guest referee in the match is none other than CM Punk? That's not the worst idea in the world. What a way to turn up the heat by having both men have their most hated rival in the match as the referee. Imagine the chaos. What's your Mount Rushmore special referees? Just kidding. Okay, I almost got mad at you. I love the show. Would love to hear your thoughts. I'm not mad at it. Like you said, I don't think it needs it. I love the idea of Punk having to count. You know, think Shawn Michaels when he had to count for Brett and didn't want to do it. Punk having to count for Drew would be a pretty cool visual. Andrew writes in, love the show, first time emailing. I have a response to your WrestleMania prediction, and I think you're gonna like it. It's my favorite thing. I think you may just think it's pretty cool. I think you're gonna like it. The whole part with Seth turning on Cody makes complete sense. Then they continue their feud. Cody faces Roman at SummerSlam, beats him for the belt, and The Rock is pissed at Roman because he wanted Roman to break Hogan's record and wanted their match at WrestleMania 41 to be for the title. This all sounds great on paper except one thing. The Rock would have to be a heel for a full year and face Roman going against... And a face Roman going against a heel Rock will get eaten alive. Rock has already made Roman look like a sidekick. That's the point. If Rock makes Roman look like a sidekick, he's the heel. First of all, Rock being a heel for a year is not that difficult when The Rock is disappearing for months at a time. The Rock is not going to be on SmackDown every other week for a year. The Rock is not going to be at every pay-per-view. The Rock's not going to be at Money in the Bank. The Rock's not going to be at WrestleMania Backlash. You know, The Rock can maintain his heeldom by bringing this character back where it's needed. And heel Rock versus babyface Roman being eaten alive, that completely remains to be seen. You're talking about suffer and succotash Roman Reigns. I'm not talking about suffer and succotash Roman Reigns. That's not the Roman I'm talking about. You're talking about a babyface Roman that exists in a world where Bloodline never existed. A babyface Roman coming off of the Bloodline is an entity which we have not seen before, and an entity that I think would be massive. At some point, we will all love and appreciate the work that Roman Reigns has done for us. It has happened with every babyface that has gotten booed. All of them. We all love and appreciate them for it. The fact that Roman came out of the suffer and succotash era and gave us this, gave us cinema, and you think that we're not going to appreciate that? I don't think so. I think babyface Roman is going to be a force to be reckoned with. I think that he's not going to wrestle that often, but I think he's going to come back for WrestleMania 41 to finally get his revenge on The Rock. I think The Rock's going to take all this Bloodline heat on, and we're going to have the match. That's going to be the match. We're going to have it, and it's going to be The Rock that turns Roman into this babyface. All right, last email. It literally just came in as I'm recording. It's from Tommaso. Just turned 18 yesterday. I love that. I love that we started the email segment with a guy in his 40s, and we're ending with somebody who just turned 18. I love wrestling. I got to ask you something no one ever asks about the Bloodline. I think it has been the best story in wrestling in the past 3 years because of its elevation of people. Thank you. Like Roman, Jay, Zayn, Owens, etc. But my cousins are more harsh on the story for the false finishes against people like LA Knight, Drew, etc. What's your opinion? Am I wrong for thinking this story is the best, even if the finishes are frustrating sometimes? The finishes are frustrating. Yes. Those are elements of the story that are frustrating. I personally believe that they will be paid off. I personally believe that there's a bigger payoff coming. I think that if you look at the positive, you're 100% right. These interference finishes have made it so that Drew McIntyre is a bigger star, that Sami Zayn is a bigger star, Kevin Owens is a bigger star, Jey Uso is a bigger star, Jimmy Uso is a bigger star, Solo Sikoa is a bigger star, Roman Reigns is a bigger star. LA Knight's a bigger star. Nobody loses. Cody Rhodes is a bigger star. Cody Rhodes is a bigger star. Nobody loses. When they when the NWO was the hottest storyline in wrestling, people would face members of the NWO and they would look like schmucks at the end of it. Nobody came across better for it. As a matter of fact, if you really look at it, the fact that the NWO buried WCW for 2 years left the whole company looking idiotic. Because once the NWO had run its course, WCW was still lame. So what are you going to support now? Everybody is better for being around the Bloodline. And you can go through it with just those names. Tommaso, you are a mature young man. You have a wise soul. Your cousins are looking at the trees. You are looking at the forest, at the big picture. And I love that there's a dude out there that just turned 18 that's looking at wrestling from this big perspective. Never lose that. Never lose sight of the big perspective, because that's what it's all about. That's what the industry is all about. It's just a story that keeps going and going and going. And you got to take it back. And the WWE is really rewarding all of us who look at the bigger perspective. We're all getting rewarded now because of it. Because while things are getting programmed from the micro point of view, they're also getting programmed from the macro point of view. It's why everything counts. Appreciate the emails. Appreciate all of you listening and watching. Don't forget to subscribe, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Spotify, whether it be on Apple. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple, leave reviews, leave ratings. If you're watching on YouTube, leave comments, leave likes. Interact with the content, would you? We'll see you soon. Have a good one, everybody.